We are live, people. Welcome to episode 28 of the weekly. And we have almost everyone here except Mr. Warren Bowman, who is on a plane right now over the airs, flying to the West Coast. And of course, speaking of West Coast, starting off with Mr. Juan Bagnell. How's it going, man?
It's going well. I'm exhausted. Let's do this.
All right. It was good seeing you this week again. I mean,
Yeah.
I only see you once a week, so twice was a little too much. But actually,
No, I mean, I think it was the perfect amount. It was like an adequate amount of getting to interact with you.
Yeah, and it was a little awkward. Yeah.
Super awkward, but like adequate.
Mm-hmm. And of course, following that up is the one and only Black Iron _man, Sam. How's it going, man?
Hey, what's going on?
All right, and Sam, of course, is giving us his favorite camera angle with soft lighting. You can see the the hue and also the color grading is a little toned down. Kind of feels like he's about to start Man of Steel. It's almost that Zack Snyder-esque type coloring. I don't know what he did there with his filters there, but it's looking pretty dope though. Sam's like, what the hell are you talking about?
This is just regular light, and I turned off all
All right, let's kick it off this week. Starting off with our uselessness of the week, and we're going to run down. We have a few topics. We're going to end with the Galaxy Note 8. I know the title says Galaxy Note 8 thoughts because we're going to spend time, of course, talking about what we thought about the events and all that stuff. But the uselessness of the week comes from it's politically tied. But the president's cybersecurity advisor resigns in moral protest, which, at least on my point, would say that puts the president lacking any cybersecurity advisor, at least for the meantime. So we don't know how he will handle these things. But just quickly, your general thoughts, because I'm sure we all don't want to spend our time talking about politics.
No.
Yeah.
I'll go first. Ready?
Yeah.
Here are my thoughts. The dumpster fire rages on.
Aha.
I feel like that's about all we need to say about this. In this era of increased cyber threat, of course, we don't have people advising the president who actually know what they're talking about.
Well, hopefully somebody takes that position soon that is knowledgeable enough.
And that the administration might actually listen to.
Sam, any thoughts?
Well, he's never really been big on technology per se.
But he's really good at the cyber. He's super good.
If you heard him during the campaign trail talk about his son, that's the person who knows everything. He can just get on there and he knows this things. So maybe we should elect some 11-year or 12-year-old kid to go in there and help him with the cyber security stuff. He has not been serious about it from the start. He's not serious about it now. There was talk about basically naming Rudy Giuliani in January for this post. He hasn't been serious about it, and this just makes a lot of sense that the person who's resigning from this basically has feels as though they have a moral obligation to say adios. And I don't fault him for it, but it leaves all of us wondering exactly where we go from here, because cybersecurity is becoming more and more important.
Okay. All right. I mean, I'm sure you guys can chime in and thoughts there, but let's move on. Amazon, and we knew this was coming. Kind of known secretly for a while, but
it's a really ominous transition. Well, for Amazon, and we knew this was coming. Dun, 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 dun.
Amazon has finally opened up its influencer program. Well, they say to YouTube stars, it's more like to people with a certain YouTube subscriber amount. But Amazon in the spring launched this influencer program. It let, of course, people who were at least at the top echelon of joining in. And according to TechCrunch, YouTubers now have their own self-service sign-up page where they can now go ahead and link their YouTube account and tie in. Now, we're not exactly sure how this program will fully flesh out because I don't know personally the details. I went ahead and tried it out. But it looks like Amazon is taking that step towards combating YouTube in some form or fashion with influencers and giving influencers a direct link, because besides, of course, the fact that, a lot of us on YouTube, including myself, we have Amazon affiliate pages where you guys support, buy stuff with no extra cost to you. But now I think they are incentivizing it more with influencer tied affiliate links, at least on the very get-go. That's one of the first things I saw there. what do you think about what Amazon is trying to do? And do you think they'll be able to create their own space that makes it separate from YouTube as it pertains to what Amazon does as a whole?
Well, I think there's always room, especially what with the recent YouTube adpocalypse. I think every channel has seen some sort of drop in monetization. This is the perfect time. We can't keep asking audiences to pay per product. Patreon, I think, has very limited scope. If we're looking at like, you know, a long-term solution, how you could maybe build a career by producing your own content, crowdfunding, I think, has a limit. You know, how much are people, look at the number of people who complain about like, oh, I might have to pay for a Disney streaming channel and my Netflix and my Hulu and my HBO Go. So other ways to monetize right now that are novel, that tap into behaviors that consumers are already going to be performing, I think is a really smart play. And so I don't think Amazon's timing could be any better here. Getting this program up and running, getting it in the hands of top YouTubers first. And then this remains a way, just like with our Amazon affiliate links, this remains a way for people to support the channel with things they were already likely to do, as opposed to having to go out of their way to throw money at a particular producer to get them to continue producing. And we see that pretty steep drop off now. Patreon, and unless you somehow crack into something incredibly potent with your audience, you can build an audience, Patreon will still fund you, and then we see that taper off pretty aggressively now. So the weight of that, I think having some other type of scheme, not scheme is in a bad way, but I mean just a structure. This is a perfect way for Amazon to encroach on Google's ad prowess.
Mm-hmm. Sam, what do you think?
No, I totally agree. I think Amazon's doing the right thing here. YouTube or Google has built up a user base, and now I don't think they know exactly what they're doing anymore with their user base, with their creator base, I should say. And Amazon is basically being very straightforward in saying that you know, YouTubers who want a different venue for revenue should come to them, because this is only open to YouTubers right now. So I think it's going to be open to other creators from different I would say platforms later on. But this is open to YouTube guys. So YouTube guys are going to get first dibs on this. Google's going to see some of its you know, some of its creators start relying more on someone else, and let's see how Google replies to this. If Google's actually going to come out with
well, and doesn't it seem to you guys that like YouTube really doesn't have much of an interest in continuing the classic YouTube model? I mean, every major move that YouTube has made recently has been, how can we become a better competing source for traditionally produced content? You know, Hollywood content, music label content, less less like, how can we really promote the smaller YouTubers? Because then it's like they have to acknowledge that PewDiePie exists, and that was sort of a black eye for them, even though it really wasn't. This seems to be like another way for them to distance themselves from smaller creators, and even from like bigger creators, but bigger creators who aren't making the kind of content that's sort of traditionally consumed by a Netflix subscriber or a Hulu subscriber.
I mean, I think you're right, but it's one of the things I've always thought YouTube has, you know, and to Sam's point, where YouTube, you know, he says YouTube they've gotten a size that they don't know what to do with, because, you know, you would think YouTube would understand that it is called YouTube, so which means you can have a plethora of many things, right? There are many types of content.
Now, I don't want you telling me I have a plethora unless you know what a plethora is. So. No, Three Amigos? Really? We're not? Oh, come on. No,
But anyway.
What I mean is, like, so this adpocalypse thing, I think you were right before PewDiePie was called out by some crazy journalists. You know, that I think PewDiePie did something that was kind of cringeworthy, but this notion that we had to like go after his sponsorships in the worst kind of way possible, I think was ultimately a black eye for YouTube. Because before that point, I think Google was fine letting this stuff coast and really trying to work on ad deals, ad buyouts, getting those ads on every kind of platform. And when advertisers started pulling, that I think just reinforced why YouTube could not be a sustainable model for them, right? And so now I think moving forward, Google is probably going to be looking at ways to maintain YouTube because they still get ad dollars out of it. But this is not going to be the platform they're investing in trying to enrich.
See, I think that's a mistake, though. I think you have to understand.
Oh, I totally think it's a mistake. I think you roll with a few of these. Sorry, guys, I'm really trying to keep these coughs off mic. You roll with some of these difficulties, and I think you can still grow the platform in a way which makes everybody a lot of money. But the effort involved, we don't see a Google right now that's really into the idea of building things. Like if it doesn't take off, they kind of just scrap it.
You mean like Duo?
They kind of devalue it. Or I mean like, no, actually I mean like Hangouts.
Okay.
Right? Hangouts never really did what they wanted it to do. So instead of really trying to manage the platform and grow the platform and improve it, what did they do? They sidestepped. And they sidestepped with Allo and Duo. And they sidestepped at the worst possible time because consumers aren't really in the mood to go experimenting with how they communicate with people. They've got good solutions now. So instead of improving something that a lot of people were using and could have gotten more people involved with that, they sidestepped. And I think I look at, you know, new initiatives too, putting so much effort behind YouTube TV. I'm a YouTube TV subscriber. We cut cable with it, but we don't see that same kind of enthusiasm for improving YouTube. There are so many things that we could fix in YouTube and make it a better platform and help it monetize better and encourage higher quality content. And after YouTube Red, they kind of went, oh, well, that wasn't an instant smash success, and development there and interest there seems to have waned. We keep going in this back and forth. Like, look at how long Google Voice withered on the vine until Google had some issues with other platforms, and now it's the backbone of Google Home. You know, like, these pieces are incongruous, and I don't think we see a Google that really has clear plans internally on how to further develop these initiatives.
Sam? Yeah, if you look at YouTube, Google is actually, I think...
Hey, Sam, I can barely hear you, Sam. Sorry, I know I was talking over you there.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Is this better?
Crank it up to the max.
Yeah, I think I just cranked it up to the max. So
push it to the limit.
Oh, we should play that song. I can't remember. Who sang that song again?
Push it to the limit.
All right, so basically, I think YouTube is actually doing what it can right now to improve, you know, YouTube. Or should I say, I think YouTube is doing what, or Alphabet is doing what it can to improve YouTube. But the problem is that they're doing this for the, you know, the analytics side. They're doing this for the ad side. They're not really doing it for the creator side. When you start looking at the initiatives that they've pushed on recently, when it comes to basically making sure that the ads on these the types of videos that ads appear on are things that are a little bit more acceptable to everyone. Or when you start looking at the algorithm, when it talks about like questionable videos about terrorism and things talking about really sensitive subjects, Google is definitely trying to make improvements. I think, but the problem is those improvements are having impacts on the people who actually create content and keep Google or keep YouTube alive, right? When they started with the whole ad issue, there were a lot of videos that became demonetized. When they started with the whole new Google algorithm, there were a lot of channels that ended up being deleted. So it's a question of, you know, how Google maintains that balance. How do they keep their back-end customers happy while they continue to make sure that it creates a vibrant, open environment for creators who want to come on and continue to build the content selection in Google? And I think they don't have an answer for that. I think right now they're stuck on the back end. That's really where their innovation and their focus really is right now, and that's on the back end. But for people who are creators, they're just feeling the bite of all these decisions being made in the back end. And for someone like Amazon to come in now and give people an actual option, saying, okay, we'll select a small group of people. We'll start with YouTube stars. We'll basically, they are going to curate exactly what you can do on there, because it's really just going to be mostly product reviews, because that's what Amazon really is about. It's really about the products they sell on there. So they're going to have less of an issue than YouTube would. But YouTube still has to answer all these questions. Otherwise, they might see a hemorrhage into other services, because right now, yes, it might just be YouTube stars going on Amazon, but if this gets open to Instagram stars, more people are probably going to look at Instagram and say, okay, that might be the venue for me to go into monetization. And if that happens, YouTube loses out on a lot of either young content creators or established content creators that focus more on a different platform that is not owned by Google.
See, you bring up a very good point, Sam. You said something that is very indicative of Google from the onset. They feature on the back end. Google as a company, as long as I've known and used any of their products, do not know how to deal forward facing, aka directly to consumers or even to who they interact
Not
as
at all.
a physical human being. You know, and that's one thing Google has not done well. I mean, even Gmail, for instance, I pay for Gmail for business. It is hard for me to find a telephone number to call somebody.
Yeah.
It
Right.
is
And as a general consumer, I can pick up the phone and get someone on Amazon when my package doesn't show up.
exactly.
That's what Amazon has always been good about that from the get-go. You know, and they would
soon,
send you
hopefully,
a
I can just walk
product
into a
before
Whole
they
Foods.
receive yours, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that is very true. So and that's the problem there, you know, because if you've had that culture from the very beginning with Gmail, one of the earlier services that was more consumer facing, and then something like YouTube, it's the same thing where, you know, we know quite well. I've heard the stories of how even you guys at Pocket now, your relationship with YouTube, and I know my relationship with YouTube. You know, people are like, and I have friends who are like, you must like hang out with YouTube, or I'm like, no. You know, you know, they just reached out to me a couple of years and they gave me generic answers to stuff I already know.
Or they send you to like go talk with other people that have the same problem in our forums who haven't found an answer.
Exactly.
That's not support.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that happens. And until they can fix it, if Amazon comes with the same just mentality that they have already as Amazon, right? As they deal with products and customers, and they apply that to that small subset that they start with, then, you know, someone like me, I mean, I do mostly a lot of product reviews on my channel. You know, I can almost, if it gets to the point I might go, I'm doing reviews and people are looking at reviews to buy products, right? So I might as well just stick in Amazon and cut down on YouTube. You know, that's where that mentality starts going.
Well, and if like the near future that I can envision is really trying to improve these tools to make Twitch a more competitive platform. And if we start like double loading content and we start looking at the financials for, we put a video up on Twitch, we put a video up on YouTube, and which one's starting to generate more revenue, then that's going to be the platform that we're going to start dedicating more of our resources to. We like years ago when I first started joining you guys, we had this conversation about, you know, how YouTube was making some odd choices. It was especially right around the time that I think they were severing the connection with Google Plus. Like they had just built in Google Plus, and that was, you know, a train wreck of epic proportions. And then they tried to back it off, but it's still like weird and tied into Google Plus in a really obnoxious way. That's never been fixed. That was years ago. You know, that's the kind of crap we're talking about, where you might be able to improve some kind of algorithm to make sure that the top videos on YouTube remain the top videos on YouTube to the detriment of smaller and up and coming channels. But you still haven't even fixed like how commenting works on YouTube. That's a big deal. But you're adding live chat into other Google products. You're like, that's ridiculous. That's not what we need.
No, it's true. And again, it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. But I think Amazon is taking the right steps now, and we just have to see how it pans out probably in the next year or so, as they keep ramping up, you know, getting influencers for YouTube and opening up to other social platforms. Speaking of somebody who's ramping things down or actually ending, Microsoft has stopped selling the original Xbox One, and rightly so, unless of course you're excited about buying one for whatever the amount is. It looks like Microsoft has ended that because we have an Xbox One S, and of course the Xbox One X is coming up. I don't think there are any thoughts here, but if you want to say anything, like a goodbye, or it was nice knowing you, or it was good to see Connect, and I wish Connect was back again. And, you know, let's not go into Microsoft deep dive pirate hole, whatever you want to call it. Let's just keep it simple, because we can get lost in Microsoft. So quick thoughts.
Okay, so I'm holding up. So I'm going to press F. There we go.
Really?
I have paid my respects.
Okay, Sam, how about you?
It's obvious that Microsoft has a new or two new, or basically it's the next generation is already going to be released next month. I think both Sony and Microsoft have played this game where they don't want to say they have new consoles out, but they actually do have new consoles out. So it only makes sense that the old generation is going to get closed out. We're not seeing the second or third generation of Xbox anymore. We're already on the fourth generation. The Xbox One S and the Xbox One X are two vastly different machines. So the fact that Microsoft is killing off the original makes perfect sense. It's old enough, or should I say, it became mature enough that they've been able to sell the S and the X off of it. It didn't sell that well. It's bulky, and it's at this point in time, I don't think anyone is going to want to go back and buy that when you have the options for the S and the X out there. So this is just it's a pretty obvious choice by Microsoft. You can still get it though. It says on the site you can still get it from as a refurb from Microsoft's site, but they're not going to be selling new ones. So it's dead. Just put it that way. They're done with it. We've now moved on to the next generation.
Okay. Moving on to a company that might be dying. Thank you for that. That segue. The reports that HTC is mulling the sale of the company as a whole or the spinoff of Vive. And of course, depending on what the options are, it looks like, to me, I think Vive might be something a lot of people might want to pick up. Maybe Google or Microsoft internally. Somebody might want to definitely pick that up. The sale of HTC as a whole, I don't know, but what are your thoughts? What do you guys think about this? Because we know HTC has been struggling. They launched a flagship device this year that nobody pretty much wants to actually purchase. And compared to, I'll put it this way. As much as I'm not the biggest fan of the OnePlus 5, the hype for that phone was much larger than the HTC U11.
Yeah, I mean, our video view counts are, I think, a pretty clear indication of that too. I mean, if I put OnePlus in a video title, it's probably going to outperform a U11 video 3-1.
Yeah. Yeah, but that kind of says a lot about HTC, right? I think we've said this several times. HTC needs to basically realize that, or should have realized a long time ago, that it's no longer an OEM or an ODM. It should have realized that it were making their own phones, but it always treated that company as though it was an OEM or ODM. All the phones that it provided, all the phones it provided for Google, all the phones that it did beforehand for other for your ISPs were always pretty popular phones. Were decent phones, but HTC had hit a few balls out of the park when they first started out on their own, and all of a sudden they hit a plateau and it was downhill from there. They haven't really been able to recreate that kind of excitement they had with the M8, the M9 of the world. Oh, actually, they just put it the M8. M8.
No, the M9 is, I think, was largely the phone that did the company in. Yeah.
And that was it. They haven't really been able to do that. Their exit from Brazil, I think, really hit them hard because you can't manufacture in a country like Brazil. You basically leave that market as a whole because just the way the country's set up, they haven't really been able to gain a lot of market share in the US because for one reason or the other, the phones they put out there haven't really been compelling. And then this year they come out with a phone, and I still have the opinion that they came out with a phone that could do without a gimmick, and they pushed the gimmick and it overshadowed exactly what the good aspects of the phone. It's just been really one bad decision after another. And I think selling right now is probably the best thing they could do. However, when you talk about the Vive, there are a lot of people who love the Vive and would love to get their hands on it. I can think of the guys at Steam wanting to pick that up. So Valve might want to pick that up. Google might want to pick that up. Name any company out there, even Facebook that has Oculus might want to pick that up. Anyone would want to pick that up. So it's so they have a solid offering there. But I think the biggest issue that's going to come out of this now is, like you guys mentioned, when you talk about the Pixel 2 or the Pixel devices, right? How is this going to affect the next Pixel? Because HTC is the one developing the Pixel, right? So if the
rumor is it's going to have squeezy.
Exactly, that gimmick that I will say it again. It's a useless gimmick. But how does that affect? So there's a few questions out there. What happens to Vive? What happens to the next Pixel? And who's going to buy HTC? Because everybody now makes their own phone. So who really wants to buy HTC? You can find cheaper in Asia. You can go to Asia and buy an Android manufacturer for a phone manufacturer. You can buy something cheaper. So
yeah, but you can buy something cheaper. and this is the thing that I will still credit HTC, is you can't buy something cheaper with the same sort of manufacturing acumen as HTC. A little less so on the U Ultra and the U11. Like I don't think they've got the same sort of business grade durability as some of the HTCs we've reviewed in the past. But the company that made the HTC 10, very few other companies can execute a phone that well. So what my dream for this company would be is you split off the Vive division, you let Vive be its own company, a company that is probably successful enough on its own to weather some of these other VR entrants, you know, the Asus, the HP, these little $300, $400 headset manufacturers. You let Vive go and compete directly against them without being shackled to the same brand name as a dying phone division. And then Google takes what's left of HTC phones and just makes that the Pixel division. That would be my dream. You would have Android One devices for developing markets built by the former manufacturing department of HTC. You've got the Pixel as the flagship device built by the manufacturing team of HTC. And I think that would be the nicest way to send this company off.
I mean, I would agree. I think just to go back to what Sam was talking about, where HTC, the demise started. I think the demise started when they had some financial issues and they sold off a lot of their manufacturing. HTC was the manufacturer for a long time for a lot of people. Right now, TCL is coming up as being one of those companies now who can do
I just felt bad for them because they made so much noise about getting Virtu, and then Virtu closed.
Yeah. And I think that was I wouldn't say it's a mistake, but it was something that I wish they didn't do, because we're at this point now where there are a lot of good phones where HTC, even if their core business was failing, or at least their device business was failing, that they could have still relied on being a certain level of an OEM again to keep things going until they get that, till they figure out what they are doing well with their devices. But now they don't, their manufacturing is limited, where now, Foxconn is eating up a lot of that, to a large degree.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, HTC is already boutique. So why not pool resources and focus all of your boutique manufacturing for one or two killer devices? Like, I would love to see a Google designed HTC implemented version of an Android One phone. You've got $100 price cap. What can you make? Can you give a Huawei a run for its money? Can you upset, an Alcatel Idol 5? I would love to see them do that. And then the bulk of their premium division is just focused solely on what can we do? Pixel, 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 pixel.
See, I would like HTC to actually take over all Google device manufacturing. And down to that bad boy, the Google Home, because I think HTC can design better stuff than anything in-house. But the problem is, who wins? Remember even with Microsoft and Nokia, right?
I mean, we don't have to do that. Look at Google and Motorola.
Yeah.
Is that they tried to keep those two divisions separate. And I think right now, with Google getting serious about making their own consumer-facing phone line, if that's what the Pixel really is, this is not a developer phone like the Nexus was, then they need to make the best possible phone they can. And they've tapped, I think, a very good manufacturer to do that. Now, ultimately, what I would want is to see HTC carved up into different divisions and then be made into different companies. But let's say HTC as a whole gets bought out by Google. What would that mean for services like Daydream? If you had the company behind the Vive now giving Android and Google powered VR a shot in the arm, that could also be a very compelling way to move the needle on consumer facing services. And they wouldn't even have to invest much in it. The HTC is already well ahead of the curve there. Mm-hmm. But again, I think we're talking about this because none of these companies have really demonstrated that they've got the will to make a drastic enough change to benefit the company at large. You know what I mean? Like HTC, I mean, looking at the comments, people are bringing up, oh, and what about those Evos? And those were great. And then the slow decline here, and it's like death by a million paper cuts. Yeah. This isn't like HTC just suddenly became irrelevant overnight. It's that they weren't adapting to changes in market trends. And then when the writing was on the wall that they were in dangerous territory, how do you move a ship that large to recover? And they haven't demonstrated that they've got the will to do that.
I mean, think about it. Look at what they did. The HTC 10 last year was a good phone. And we all said, you know what, HTC, it's the right step, right? Next year.
Most underrated phone of the year.
Next year, you're going to kill us. You're going to kill us. And then they went and looked at the G5 and said, you know what, let's try something like LG. Let's take it back.
I actually liked the G5 initially. So I don't know.
No.
And then they were like, well, we won't have moving parts, but we'll put a squeezy on it. And, you know, we saw the results. You know, it's almost like, to me, it's really funny when you have a market leader like Samsung. And the one company who's copied Samsung well and done it in their own way is Huawei. Yeah. Huawei has looked at what Samsung's done well. Even some of the attack ads, like Samsung mentioned, now a dual camera. And Huawei just put an ad as like dual camera family. So what are you talking about, bro? We've had this for a while. Right. You know? I mean, but that's
dual camera on a $199 phone you can pick up in Target. Where have you been?
Exactly. So I think that's the thing a lot of people, these companies are missing, where a company like Huawei has said, look, we're going to look at Samsung. Remember, it's our industry. And also outside the industry, Samsung is king. Let us look at what they do best. Let's take that and then move forward. And HTC is almost done away from that. Remember, they started looking at Apple. Remember the HTC A10 or
that 1A9.
1A9, and
flipping Apple clone. I got so much hate for saying this is an Apple knockoff.
Yeah.
Like, no, because Apple copied their antenna bands. It's like that doesn't mean that the 1A9 isn't a total knockoff.
It was a total Apple clone. Yeah.
I mean,
it was a good-looking Apple clone too.
Yeah, it was. I mean, yeah, exactly.
It was a great-looking Apple clone. It's still an Apple clone.
You move over that way, and you're going, why? So they've made a lot of missteps, and now they're at the point where, like, we've talked about this already here. It's, do they split off? And I think, to me, I think Vive split ups, but I think most likely somebody will pick them up before you can spin that off as a separate company.
I think they'll wait for the Vive to get spun off before someone picks it up. If there's even talk, if they're seriously thinking about it, because why would you want the rest of HTC when you can just pick up Vive what you want and just go with it?
I mean, true, but I think the person who Steam is probably looking at that first already and saying, we need that as soon as possible. If we can take it off, we can take it off, because we can now fully build out our dream that we're working with Oculus, and Oculus kind of went with Facebook, what we wanted to do there. So I mean, you're right. It's I think the end is nigh for HTC. I think it's it's maybe a year tops, and we might see by this time next year we might see HTC as being either part of Google and the name disappears.
I mean, I don't want to write off that maybe someone in their leadership can affect some kind of change, but I agree with you. If things are being run at HTC the way they currently are now, I don't give them a lot of time left to respond to this market. It's been too long with them not having a good hit and not building up their reputation with consumers, not getting their phones into customers' hands. And this is another sort of general trend where, I mean, we've been really harsh on like LG, for example, but LG is still demonstrating middling, trickling growth in a lot of markets. That's at least some sort of positive life sign, some sort of faint heartbeat that the company is still able to resonate with some consumer base. I can't say we've seen the same from HTC, and I think they're astroturfing their attempt at a grassroots movement with their influencer program, not influencer program, their enthusiast program, whatever it is. What is it? HTC? I can't remember, but basically Elevate. So anytime I would say anything remotely critical of the phone, I would have people jackbooting the comments of my video to say like I was obviously a shill and against HTC and I hated them. That's not the right way to do it. That's obnoxious. That turns people off to your brand. If you had a true grassroots swell of support, then that would be something more akin to what we saw from OnePlus. It resonates on an emotional level with geeks. It's an emotional resonance. It's not like a rational one, but that became a real grassroots support for that company. So HTC should have the ability to go from the top also and cut TV ads and get those ads on billboards and really try and get the messaging out there. And if they can't do that, then it doesn't matter what phone they make now, because no one will know about it.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Well, let's change gears.
Actually, real quick before we get into because we're gonna move to Samsung, right?
Yeah.
The one last piece of gaming news. I'm the one bringing some gaming news to the table, and we don't have to spend a lot of time on this. Did you guys read the Mark Laidlaw ending for Half-Life 3?
No, I stayed away from that because what's the point? What's the point of teasing me like that?
That is true, though. I looked at it and I just was like,
you're not producing it, you're making this stuff?
I had to. So apparently, I mean, like, the convoluted story, as I can untangle it from Reddit, is that Mark Laidlaw was a story writer for Valve, and that apparently he could still get in trouble for this, but whatever sort of NDA he had on his original concept for the ending of Half-Life 2 Episode 3 has expired. That's the story. There is zero confirmation from that. And on Mark Laidlaw's Twitter account, people have said like, oh, I know that this isn't 100% official, but thank you for releasing it. And then he'll reply like, it's 0% official. Like, he's actually trying to distance himself from the very thing that he put out there. But it's basically a letter from Gordon Freeman detailing sort of the plot synopsis of what would have happened in his version of Half-Life 2 Episode 3. And I am so upset that we never got this game. I was reading it like almost tearing up about how this was something I never got to play. Like, if you've ever had like regret over a game that never existed, that's where I was. Because Half-Life 2, the episodes, Half-Life 2 Episode 1 and Episode 2 are still the high points of my gaming existence. Like, I don't think I've ever experienced another game that quite captured the imagination, the scope, the grandeur, and how cinematic a story could be delivered than those titles. Especially once you get to the end of Episode 2 with that, you protecting the town against striders in a car, listening to the radio to know where you have to go next, gravity bombing, and just like, I don't think I have ever experienced anything so hair trigger, pulse racingly intense. And so you read through his synopsis, and it's exactly the kind of ending that I would have wanted for a character like Gordon Freeman, who is ultimately you. It's not like they have to find a new voice actor for Gordon Freeman. Like that wasn't a problem that they had. So I'm getting a little choked up just talking about it. So if you were really wanting to try and get a sense of where this could have gone, I know they were going to cancel the Episode 3 to just make a Half-Life 3, and then that never happened. And then Steam came and you made way more money on Steam than you ever could from publishing one specific video game, and Valve kind of became exactly the enemy that they were trying to fight against. I get all that. I'd recommend giving it a read. I really thought it was a great way, because I don't think we'll ever get it. So it's kind of irrelevant in the sense of it being a spoiler, because it's probably never going to exist.
No, it will.
Why not?
Once they buy Vive and make, of course, the VR version of Half-Life 3, that's what's going to happen. It's going to happen in my dreams, but it will happen. Well, Sam, do you want to talk about this quickly? Richie A was talking about BioWare stopping Mass Effect. Basically, no more Mass Effects at this point.
No, it's from what I understand, I haven't really followed the story too well, but from what I understand, it's in basically they're not going to make any more updates to the single player version of things, to the campaign version of things. They're going to focus more on doing more updates to the multiplayer side, which makes sense. Initially, when I saw this, I was a little pissed off. Like, you guys kind of delivered a 60% done game, and now you're telling us that you're going to be done with updating the campaign side of it. You should spend as much money to make sure that thing is spick and span before you stop updating. But it makes sense. The campaign, you get through it, that's that, right? No one really goes back to replay the campaign. So that's basically what you're saying. You're not going to be going back to replay the campaign, but the multiplayer is where it's going to be. I just don't even see what the pull is for the multiplayer. At this point, for me personally, I'm done with Mass Effect. I'm just really done with Andromeda. Just had no pull. It just had no pull.
I definitely agree. I mean, I tried playing the single player for a while, and I just couldn't do it with that game. I was disappointed. And again, we played the multiplayer, and there wasn't any, you know, as much as people can dig Call of Duty, the multiplayer can keep you there. You know, once you get into it, it keeps you there. There was nothing to pull me into that multiplayer in Mass Effect, and you know, we'll see. And coming to I realized that the main Mass Effect team wasn't the one who built this game. You know,
no. I mean, again, this is sort of the danger of taking a property from developers that know it so well inside and out, and trying to reach some arbitrary release date and not making the best game you could.
Yeah, because those guys are making Anthem, which is the next big game from BioWare, which looks better even just from the trailer compared to, you know.
I think.
Yeah, but I mean, like, but how does it? I mean, doesn't that? Sorry, I tried to say three things at the same time. We've been burned by so many trailers that now when we look at the last property that a developer puts out, that's really our gauge.
Yeah.
Right. You know, let's say, you know, like the team that made Superman 64 put out a kick-ass trailer.
Really, come on. Like, that is like, oh.
Would we believe them? No. I mean, like,
Superman
the last point of evidence that we have from this developer is an unfinished game. And I don't care what trailer they put. I can make an amazing trailer for something that doesn't exist. Give me money. Sure, let's do it.
So I think the best I saw on this online, I think it was on Reddit. Someone went ahead and put two games side to side. One was Hellblade, and the other one was Mass Effect Andromeda. One was made by a big multi-million billion-dollar publisher. The other was made by what is in essence just Ninja Theory, which is they're really small, right? And you look at the actual graphics in the game, the actual facial recognition, and you can tell that one person actually understood what they were making, and one person understood what the consumers wanted, and the other people just wanted to put something out because they promised to put something out, and that was it. And Hellblade, the graphics, the motion capture is leaps and bounds beyond what Mass Effect did, and Mass Effect had a higher budget. So at this point, it's like, what are you doing? It doesn't even make like business sense to continue doing this because you're not even producing anything that's worthwhile.
Yeah, no, I was one of the draws for me for Mass Effect. It wasn't necessarily gameplay because I never really enjoyed the gameplay as much. I love the cinematics and how Mass Effect was built as almost that interactive game. Because you know, when you watch the characters talk as you're having dialogue conversation, you're like, this thing is really good. And then I'm watching this game, I'm like, I can't stand this now. What is oh god?
And then from Chris Lopez in our live chat, let's not forget that Suicide Squad had kick-ass trailers.
True, that is.
What are you trying to say? Suicide Squad wasn't a good movie? I love that movie. What are you talking about?
It did have a. I mean, I had a special trailer company, man. This guy's made. Yeah. This guy's made a kick-ass trailer.
I absolutely adore the 3-minute cut of Suicide Squad.
Oh yeah,
that thing was on point.
Definitely do not enjoy the 200-minute cut of Suicide Squad.
Speaking of cuts and some cutbacks, Samsung CEO is going to be spending 5 years in jail. This is, of course, stemming all those bribery allegations. He was found guilty, although he's getting a much shorter jail time sentence than the 12 years that the prosecution was looking for. He apparently bribed 4 foundations to build support for the former president initiatives with a total of $38 million, effectively ensuring the regulatory approval of the merger of 2 Samsung-controlled companies. Here's one of the interesting things here. Samsung is a third, or is it a third, or whatever the percent of Korea's GDP. I mean, I would say I expected the CEO not to get 12 years because that would be damaging for the company as a whole and also the country's GDP. But
I have to believe they have to go a little lighter on him because he knows things about other people in other businesses and in government, right? Yeah. So, I mean, you have to make an example out of him, but not too big an example out of him.
Plus also the fact that, but this also puts Samsung in a very interesting situation because the executive is the vice chairman because his father was a chairman. His father had been sidelined from, he had a heart attack in 2014. So Samsung now has to look for a new leader and has to do a couple of things. I know they just mentioned that they're instituting a brand new corporate governance in Samsung to stem these kind of activities. But I want to get your thoughts, Sam. What do you think about everything that's transpired as we move forward to the Galaxy Note 8 announcement? Again, this came a day after the announcement.
Yeah, realistically, it's not going to affect the sales of this device. What it does affect is the fact that now Samsung thought it had quelled a lot of the board members who wanted to hold on to control of the company. They wanted to keep the control of the company in the hands of the family, and they finally did this mid last year, early this year, by a lot of decisions that were made over the past few years. They were able to bring a lot of control back into the Lee family. Now this kind of puts that all back up in the air. Right? There's a lot of loyalty for the Lee family in that company. So the fact that the son now is going into, what is ostensibly a 5-year jail sentence, what are they going to do? Who's going to step up? I'm sure they probably have someone who could step into that role. But after 5 years, do they get someone else from the Lee family in there? Or do they finally, with the new corporate governance, do they finally, step away from the family and say, hey, maybe we need to make this an organization that's a little bit more in line with a lot of tier 1 companies out there. Maybe we find a CEO or chairman that's totally outside of the organization and bring them in to bring some new blood and some new kind of energy. We don't really know. It's still pretty early in this whole in this whole situation. But I'm actually a little kind of surprised that he got jail time. I wasn't deeply into the actual trial itself, but this is all stemming from the issue that they had with the prime minister. So I was thinking it would probably end at the political side and not come into the corporate side of things. But the fact that they went corporate means that we might be seeing other companies, other South Korean companies, with CEOs get indicted in this. Because if Samsung can go down for this,
just more company ain't left.
A lot of other people. This is not just a Samsung problem. If I'm an executive or chairman of any other company out there in that region of the world, I would be a little worried right
now. Juan?
No, I mean, like that, my main point, I know I was delivering it facetiously, but I'm not surprised he got jail time. I'm not surprised that he got a little bit of jail time and not a lot of bit of jail time. And I do think it speaks to a certain kind of corporate culture where business interests are entangled in government in ways that are very difficult to untangle. I think as Americans, we all have a sense of that here too, where there are certain policies and certain programs and certain relationships that we wish weren't so closely tied with our elected officials. So I think this is playing out exactly the way that it should, for the right publicity, for the right visibility, that you're not going to rock the boat too much. You're not going to upset people on the ground. You're going to give them some sense that justice has prevailed. And then business will probably go back to business as usual after all of this has died down in a year or two.
So is the president still going to go on trial, or was she fine after she resigned? The former president.
I'm not too sure if they're going to pursue criminal charges for her, but I think her assistants that was making these deals, I think she is going to jail if she's not already in jail.
Wow. I mean, there's always a buffer.
Yeah.
You always have a buffer. If you don't, you're an idiot. If you don't have a buffer, you are the buffer.
Oh boy. Let's hold off on talking about if you don't have a buffer after midterm elections next year. Let's see.
Dude, I mean, like I know, like I've been listening to a lot of like political podcasts. In case anyone in your audience hadn't noticed that I've been kind of a political junkie of late. There is such an echo chamber going on right now. I think the midterms are going to be pretty bad. We'll have to see how it actually plays out. But
the fact
I don't have a whole lot of hope, in what's going on right now.
It's going to be interesting. But let's save midterms for midterms and turn over to the main course for today. Talking about the Galaxy Note 8, Samsung's latest device in the Note family. which was announced Wednesday. We got to see it live. Myself and Juan, Sam got to watch the press conference. Yeah. And before I even ask you guys, I would say, though, talking to influencers at the event and then also watching some of the reactions is, and I'm sure Juan will probably state some of this too, is a lot of people were feeling a little uninspired by the device. There was a lot of Galaxy S8 Plus to Galaxy Note references, and this is why I tell all of them, forget all of you. That device is awesome. So,
well, I need to respond to Trayvon Reed in our live chat because he was all excited about getting his pre-order in there, and I have to say he's probably making the biggest mistake of his life, and I feel bad for him. And I'm absolutely joking, Trayvon. I think you're really gonna dig the phone. I think you're really gonna like it.
The funny thing is, like, I saw all these other things, and I'm like, I don't care. I held onto my Note 5 for a reason, and this is the reason I held onto my Note 5.
Yeah.
So I don't really care whether it's good or it's bad. I'm like, I don't care. I'm getting the damn phone.
Sam, look, you are the true Note loyalist, and that's one thing I will give Samsung. And they were, it was good that they stated that in the press event, talking about how the Note fans are the most loyal fan base, I think, in mobile, core loyal fan base, not like Apple fans who are like, yeah, they can't really talk about the device as much as, say, a Note fan would, who would talk about how the pen really changed. The pen is mightier than the sword, and when I write it on my phone, fire streaks with the live messages. Wow, that's pretty good though.
That was oddly poetic interlude for our show.
Yeah, that was like a haiku hybrid or something.
But yeah,
no. Okay, I mean, like, all the press conference aside, I felt it was a little fan servicey. Yeah, like, I really loved that they acknowledged the Note 7 in this press conference, but then so much of it, there was so little discussion about the device and so much more because of you, and you stayed loyal, and you're our bestie, and we're BFFs, so you go buy our almost $1,000 phone. It felt, after a point, it went from being sort of appreciated to being kind of saccharine to feeling a little scummy. I mean, how many other times have we talked about other companies on this channel? Apple is not your friend. Samsung is not your friend. These are multi-billion-dollar organizations which exist solely to provide value for their shareholders. Tell me about the phone.
But
we got very little about the phone. It was super surface this year.
No, I disagree. I disagree because they spent time. She talked about live message, and it's not like it's hard.
They didn't jump into the actual. I think you're right. In a way, they didn't jump into the actual innards of the phone because I didn't really see them talking about the processor or anything like that. But that's a problem.
Same as 10 nanometers.
Yeah.
But I mean, think about it. We got to the end of that press conference, and they didn't even tell us what the price was. We had to wait until press
releases were out. They did not want to say what the price was.
That's what I mean. It's like,
that was strategic.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. When a company like Apple has done an amazing job of making specs and price not matter because they are a lifestyle brand, not a technology brand.
Yeah.
Right? You get hyped up and wait outside in lines outside Apple stores because of the emotional factor of being involved in a movement like that, not for a rational, well-considered, I sat down and added up all the numbers kind of reason. And Samsung is desperately trying to craft that same kind of narrative. And I think they're the closest Android manufacturer to finding success there. So I found this press conference to be one of my, I mean, it's better than the Broadway show spectacle that we had for the S5.
Oh, yeah.
But this was also like, I enjoyed it. I just thought it was a terrible way to announce a phone.
It was a show. It wasn't a phone announcement.
I mean, it's fine, man. It was cool, man.
Because the Note, this is the same problem I had with LG's ads for the V20.
Yeah.
The Note has so much to offer as a baller, hardcore, business grade, productivity device, and artistic creation device that I want you to dig into those. I wanted to hear more about the Pen Up service, that weird social network. And all they did was show us some artwork on the floor. I mean, literally stepping on people's drawings to show us that they have this thing and it's called Pen Up. Now let's go back to telling you how great you are for picking the Note. And you're like, no, tell me about what's going on here. Is the S Pen really improved? Does it offer any new features?
But here's the thing though, right? As much as you don't like that, right? Sam is living proof that their message is correct.
No, their message was correct. And then, so like I was saying, I agree with you. They didn't go into the detailed specs of things, but their messaging was on point. Because a note user, there's one thing a note user would tell you if you actually
preach, Sam. Preach,
if they actually saw that that keynote. And the one thing they'll tell you is like, wow, the screen notes, you can now do pages upon pages of screen notes. That is amazing. Because that's basically the way we take a lot of notes. I just pop out the S Pen and start writing, and then you realize, oh, you can't add another page. You kind of have to just be done. So that was a big kind of I would say a big inclusion for a lot of people who use the notes.
I tell you, look, Sam sent me photos of like big smiley faces when that came off. I was like, dude, it's just a black screen with penmanship on it.
They know their audience. They know their audience, and they've tried to deliver on on the things the audience actually really uses.
I think they've satisfied their audience. Now, I mean, what we really need to see for the Note this year is, has the name been tarnished to any significant degree by consumers in an era where it's not a novelty to have a big screen phone?
Yeah.
That has always been one of the trickiest things to discuss about a Note is, are people getting it because of some notion of premium productivity, or were they getting it because it was one of the only options for a truly large screen multimedia grade device? And now I think we'll get the true test of the division between the pure Note enthusiasts, the people who really do value that. I mean, like when I pull out my Note 4 and I fire up Cyberlink or something like that, I mean, like I have the best possible control for doing something like video editing, where the pad of my finger isn't blocking my video timeline. And I can see, 10th of a second, 100th of a second edits in a way that I can't on any other phone that might even do a better job of creating the content. That's a valuable proposition. But am I in a significant minority? Is this phone being purchased because it's expensive and it's a status symbol? Or are people just getting it because it used to have a big screen and it used to have the biggest battery? Yeah. That's not novel anymore. We have lots of options for that now.
No, I think that's very true. But I think some of that questions were partially answered last year. I think the hesitance to go from a Note 7 to an S7 Edge until Samsung had to say, please send it back, put a really huge indication that fan base is much larger.
Sam, that's why I think this is so dangerous. I'm sorry, Sam. This is like the main point I'm trying to get at is we saw no movement to other manufacturers. I think something like Samsung had something like 95% retention for people who had to turn in their Note 7s. But those people got other big screen phones. And those people might have also migrated to an S8 Plus.
Yeah.
So now is the true test. Over the next 2 fiscal quarters, we're going to have to start really paying attention to the shipment details from manufacturers, because Samsung's not going to put out the actual sales numbers. We're going to have to be looking at how many phones have shipped to get some kind of indication to see how many people went from an S8 Plus back to the Note, or how many people went from an S7 Edge back to the Note. And that's the true test. I think Samsung is going to weather this incredibly well. But I think we are going to see a clearer divide now between the people who were Note fans for big screens and the people who were Note fans because they really wanted a Note.
True, but I think that also helps Samsung in the long run, right? I think that helps them push the Note to what we want, right? That's separate division.
Oh, yeah, because we also know that those people didn't go and get an iPhone 7 Plus. They stayed with Samsung. But if this is what we were all concerned about during the Note 5, right? The Note 5 didn't ship to a number of markets. The S6 Edge Plus was a more expensive option. It was the more premium option, and that's where we saw Samsung really start to find their footing with dividing the S into a small and big screen device. So we already had a clear indication that Samsung had the market research and the market data to say a Note without an S Pen is a viable product and is probably going to be a successful product. And that's where we have those fears that the Note will become just an S with an S Pen, is because if they can satisfy a larger number of people with a big screen S, then why make the Note the vanguard product?
I think that there's enough, and this is just me, I think there's enough of a consumer base out there for the Note product line to actually make this phone a hit. And why I say that is,
oh, it's definitely going to be a hit. This thing's going to sell well, and there's a
why I
pent-up
say
market
that
for
is
it
just
because
the
of the Note 7.
pure features of the Note line is quite different from the features of the regular S. Yes, internals might be very similar, but you don't have your S notes on there. You don't have your screen notes on there. There are a lot of things like capturing GIFs and stuff like that, like things you can use the pen for, this S Pen and phone combination that you can't do on the other device. There's pretty much a good argument for people to be really tied into one versus just a big screen. And so I should say into the Notes versus just a big screen phone. Because if you want a big screen phone, you don't have to stay with Samsung. There are a lot of other companies out there that make big screen phones. I think what we're going to see here is, I think the big question, along with what you're asking, is also going to be the price point. With this price point, are people truly still going to go, okay, I have this phone I've been paying off since I give the Note 7 back. Am I willing to take on more of a cost to jump into this product line that I actually like? And that is where I think people might be a little bit more iffy because of the price, because this is not a cheap phone. This is definitely not a cheap phone. So we'll see. I think the first couple of weeks will tell us exactly how this device is doing.
I think, I mean, it's going to be interesting, but let's just be, if I'm Samsung, once the iPhone 8 hits and it's tiny screen compared, I would just say you're paying more for a small device. I mean, I would try and do some advertising just using the size of my phone to basically knock Apple and saying you're paying $1,000 for this little dinky thing, and it doesn't do this, 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 and this.
I actually think that Samsung did Apple a favor. I think the fact that the Note didn't deliver at $999 gives Apple room to say, for their fan base, Apple are premium products. So, you know, this is what a premium new handset from Apple is going to cost. Oh, wow. I actually think it plays into Apple's hand here.
I mean, yeah, I think it does. I agree with you. It does in that aspect, but I think on the counterverse, it also points out to the fact that Samsung can now hit you and say,
right, but I mean, those kinds of conversations, we've already seen those types of ads from Samsung. We don't see migration. We don't see iPhone users looking at Samsung ads where Samsung is kind of trashing the lack of features on an iPhone, and really all it does is it makes Apple users defensive. They don't go, oh, you know, you're right, my phone does suck. I have made a terrible life decision in spending $700 on my phone. Thanks for pointing that out, Samsung. I'll buy your products in the future. Like, that doesn't happen. It makes them more resolute as to why they like the Apple ecosystem, where there are fewer features, but they work better and it just works. And I can FaceTime with my grandmother, and you can't video call with your grandmother on an Android because everything's been jacked up with Hangouts and Allo and Duo. You know, like, all it does is just further entrench the divided fan bases. It doesn't really resonate as a counterpoint. So when Samsung goes out there and says, like, man, they've got $1,000 phone, all you're going to see are Note fans patting themselves on the back. No iPhone user is going to go, oh, I could have saved $40 and gotten a Note. Oh no, what did I do? Con. Like, that's not going to happen.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you do raise a very valid point to that aspect, but that advertising still does wonders.
Well, but I mean, that's why we're talking about the top two players right now. And whenever we have a Samsung conversation, we have to include Apple to some degree, because those are the two companies that have figured out how to emotionally resonate with their consumer bases.
Yeah.
And how to really satisfy their fans in an emotional way. And so that's why they're going to be the two titans of this next round. I mean, because, you know, I'm sure we're going to see some cool stuff from LG, from Huawei, the Pixel XL2, the Mate 10. I mean, all of these things, these are going to be baller phones at the end of the year. The end of this year is going to be phenomenal for brutal smartphone competition. But outside of us as enthusiasts, the main conversation is going to be Note versus iPhone. Yeah, that's it. True. That's what it's going to be.
So speaking of that, you know, the other big entrance into the Note line, of course, is the dual camera. And, you know, Apple's had a dual camera for a while. A few other people's had dual cameras. But since we are going to be bringing Apple into this conversation, what did you think of the dual camera setup? Now, the one thing I also mentioned is, you know, Samsung has now decided that, especially, I like the pro modes on camera. You do too, but they've not really expanded that, and they're trying to make it still as simplistic as possible. So I get that thought process from them. But having that dual camera, what do you think about the dual camera itself? And like what they've loaded there with dual OIS, which I don't think anybody has, right? I could be wrong.
Well, this is my favorite implementation of my least favorite way to do dual camera, if that helps. Hardware image stabilization on the zoom sensor is a benefit. When we saw the OnePlus 5 update that enabled EIS, electronic image stabilization, software stabilization for 4K video, and it also stabilized the zoom sensor, that suddenly made video much more usable. I mean, that's like one of the most significant updates for one feature on a phone that I think I can recall in my history of reviewing phones. That was a big deal. What Samsung's doing here is a TikTok fight with Apple, right? So the end of last year, we got our first zoom sensor phone, our first dual sensor portrait mode enabled device in the iPhone 7 Plus. And I think what Samsung has done here is the expected iterative update over what Apple gave us last year. So again, this is like, we have to talk about Apple and Samsung like they're Cain and Abel, you know, like they're at each other's throats, and they're looking at each other for inspiration as to where to go next. And so I don't particularly like zoom sensor as the dual sensor solution, but this is currently the best implementation of that. And I would expect Apple to have like a small TikTok improvement to their camera too, so that they don't have to really fight each other too hard, but they'll probably just reach parity with the same kinds of sensors. What I'm more interested to see is if the iPhone 8 brings us any kind of augmented reality, because that'll kick Samsung in the nuts. AR kit on Apple's developer resources, that could be a game changer in a way that Project Tango from Google has really failed to motivate phone manufacturers. Apple building that kind of tech into an iPhone could be pretty epic. And
Apple just said we're going to buy HTC Vive, and that's it.
I mean, we also know they're working on a glasses project. It got pushed back. Yeah. But if they have AR kit, you start building AR for phones. The iPhone 8 supports that kind of hardware natively right out of the box. And then consumers see, like, I can mess with stuff in reality through my phone cameras. It makes the notion of a pair of glasses so much more feasible from a company that's not going to give us Google Glass. It'll look a lot prettier.
Yeah, I mean, on the Android side, in terms of like that augmented reality, we know it's coming because the only Qualcomm announced that Snap. What's it called again? But I think it's on their next processor, which most likely is the 845. So we're looking at Galaxy S9 and whatever devices to carry that next year. But you're right. You know, if Apple does that first, that now just changes the whole dynamic for.
But I'm sorry. I mean, to get back to the Samsung, the Note 8 cameras, the S8 has one of the best cameras of the year without a dual sensor, and the experience on the Note is exceedingly similar. But I do worry that Samsung is starting to fall into feature creep on the camera app. Like, this is one of the most fiddly Samsung camera apps I think I've used in my entire time reviewing Samsung cameras. I mean, it kind of feels a little bit like going back to the old Note 2 days, where you had like sunset mode, fireworks mode, NASCAR car driving mode, banana split mode, bananas Foster's mode. You know, like that I worry that the core usage of pulling up your phone, pushing the shutter button, and getting a great image, something that the Pixel does very, very well for consumers who don't want to mess with memorizing where everything is on their phone, I think has been somewhat lost on Samsung. It was never there on Huawei. LG has a completely different focus. They're going after cinematographers with their camera app. But Samsung used to have the best all-rounder. Manual modes when you wanted it, a really great auto mode for most people to interact with simplicity. And now it's the little things, like if you linger in the wrong way on the shutter, like you want to do a burst photo, if your finger twitches at all, it locks the zoom. So then it zooms out instead of taking the photo. So now you've missed your shot. And now gestures are so much harder to nail when you're in manual mode, because if you don't perfectly hit the slider for the manual setting, it flips to your selfie camera. You know, so it's things like that that and I think a lot of companies are falling into this trap. Like, oh, you want a portrait mode, so let's add this extra button. And now we need to change this menu. And now we need to add all these other features. And those things are starting to get in the way of the photography and composition of how we capture an image, how we preserve a memory. That's a very minor concern, because I still think this is going to be a killer camera, but it forces the user to relearn how they use the phone as opposed to adapting to the user's needs. Right?
I don't think that much, though. I mean, I think it's still simple enough. I agree with you with some of those features, but let's be frank.
I mean, it's the shutter button. I mean, like the shutter button for me is a big. So your solutions are, you hit the volume rocker, which can shake the phone. So if you're in a low light situation, you have a higher chance of blurring the image.
But it has OIS.
You perfectly, well, but that's just it. Is OIS helps when you touch the screen and there's almost no movement from the act of engaging the shutter, but you have natural just sort of hand movement. We can't stay perfectly still. So then you sort of have to remember to learn how to perfectly perpendicularly hit the shutter button so that you don't engage the zoom rocker, or you go through a complicated menu set to find the floating button and add a different shutter to your screen that floats for where you want it. This is an complication.
It's okay.
This is an overcomplication to what should be the most basic aspect of interacting with a camera. Push button, get image. That should be it. You shouldn't have to mess with anything around that process.
But you don't want a specific food mode? Because it has a specific food mode.
Right. I mean, like when I have my Bananas Foster's mode, then I'll be happy.
So here's the other one I want to talk about, which I'm sure a lot of people laughed at the event, and some people were like, whatever. Bixby, our good friend Bixby. And they showcase Bixby chaining functions and doing some of the things that I was hoping Bixby would do.
Yeah, starting to see some there. I mean, it's basically a fancy way to do macros, but that's exactly what
it is. And I mean, if they can
macros,
if they can do that well, then I personally think that's the right way for Bixby to go. At least on Samsung devices, where those macros just get laid out pretty well. And then you can take your selfie or your food selfie, and it goes those kind of things that at least that you've set it up for what you want it to do. Now, the one thing I'm just concerned about is how do you set it up? They didn't show the setup process, right? Of course, how you set up those macros. And as long as it's easy enough to set up, then I think that plays a lot of benefit. I don't know. What do you guys think?
What I waited to see with Bixby was the whole integration with Samsung Connect. Connect Home. So as a competitor, using your phones as a competitor to Google Homes and the Amazon Alexas of the world. But I didn't see that. And that's a little concerning, because it might mean that the features there, but it might mean that Samsung isn't focusing on that.
No, so I know officially it's coming, because I did ask about that, and they said it's just not ready. It's not something that went to ship because it was just not going to look.
Because that would have been a big seller for me on that phone. Whereas I just come in, dock my phone in the charger, and just start using it as a whatever, as my new home controlling device or whatnot. But but the Bixby stuff, to me, what they showed apart from the macros, what I really didn't think it was a big deal. I think chaining macros, you could easily activate it with app icon rather than use voice. I think it's really obnoxious when a lot of people use their voice in public. Right? Like, you're going to take a picture, like this, the whole stuff he was talking about, right? Taking pictures of food because it's a big foodie anyway, and take a picture of the pizza, like, what's it called? Google,
I will say
the Bixby start food mode. I'm like, if you said that in public and I was around there, I'll look at you with the weirdest eye. Like,
no, I will say though, I did do during the eclipse, I used Bixby to take a selfie, and it was cool because I didn't have to actually hit the button and go through everything that Juan complained about. I just held the phone. So I mean,
turncoat.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just saying, hey, look, I was like, yo, Bixby take selfie. Everyone's like, yeah, done. So, I mean, I do agree with you, though. Yeah, certain things. But again, we're moving to the voice world. We know eventually we're going to be like the movie Her. We're going to have voice controls for almost everything.
And then we have to tell adults about inside and outside voice.
Well, that's actually what I would love to see is as we start making these transitions to like augmented reality, right? It doesn't make sense to try and have some sort of tactile control when we're interacting with information at eye level. We have like like little pads that we're gonna swipe around on our glasses or something.
Yeah.
Excuse me. What I would love to see is someone make something like a fashionable version of those mics that like special forces use that stay right on your voice box. Because then if I want to engage with some sort of voice control action, I can use the bare minimum amount of speech of instrument power from my voice to interact with that service.
What if it was an in-ear wireless bone conducting earphones?
Well,
just with a mic in there. Something,
like,
let's say, similar to what Braggy's doing. I'm just
because Braggy bitch.
Because like that kind of interaction, I think is what's going to be necessary to organically integrate these services into everyday life, especially voice bone conduction playback, where you don't block your ears, but you still get audio information served to you in an organic way. Those are the kinds of things, like those are these major ergonomic and etiquette problems that we still need to fix with mobile technology. And I don't see any company that really has the fortitude or the will to address those concerns. Instead, it's, well, we made the screen taller. That's great. That is a benefit. I have more stuff on my screen. Still doesn't fix the fundamental core problems of interacting with mobile technology. It just makes them a little bit nicer when I am using mobile technology.
I disagree with all of you, man. Both of you are wrong. I want Star Trek communicator tap super loud.
Oh no. Imagine that on the train.
Like it would go, yes, Commander, and a bong 8. Sam's like, yes, thank you very much for calling me Commander. Can you contact Sam? Tell him that, Commander 8 is coming in.
On your
No. I just want to be obnoxious as possible and tap like this, and then they see it comes up. I'm just saying, it'd be much better, it'd be much cooler. Everybody look at me like, space captain or something. I don't know.
Okay. That was someone's fantasy right there. Now we know.
I mean, some people fantasize about, like Princess Leia in the slave bikini. And Bong is all hyped up on being called Commander with his Star Trek communicators.
Hey, to each his own.
Yes, yeah, exactly. But I guess we've pretty much covered all our thoughts on the Note 8 in general. 6 gigs of RAM, which is still not needed on an Android, I think, but of course they had to kind of just make it 6, I think, more than anything else. Because right now, I don't think Android, you get that benefits of 6 or 8 gigs of RAM.
Yeah, I mean, isn't the test going to be how good is Samsung going to get at things like optimization and garbage collection?
Yeah,
because my S8 Plus is starting to slow down a little. It's always the clear indication, like when I boot it up, and it takes a while before it stops stuttering through my lock screen.
Okay, you have a defective unit.
No, I don't.
I'm telling you.
And most people in our comments will acknowledge some sense of Samsung's can
most people burdened. Could you comment now and just tell Juan that Commander
go through our live chat.
Commander
they're way ahead of us.
The Colonel
they've already been talking about this.
I mean, I'm scrolling. I don't see anything.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. No, but I mean, this is, I mean, for all of their hype, and it was marketing hype, this is something that I think Huawei has done really well. I still use my Mate 9 every day as my Marvel Future Fight gaming platform, and this thing doesn't miss a step. I mean, it is just as snappy, just as lean, just as quick as the day I cracked it out of the box to review it. And one of those early tests is when I boot it up, does this thing stutter on my lock screen in a way that might make me miss my pin? And my S8 Plus isn't stuttering that bad, but it's starting to get there. My S7 is a mess, and I've purposely not wiped it out to start fresh because I want to see how bad will this get if I keep just putting stuff on the phone. This is like one of those last things. I don't think 6 gigabytes of RAM helps us there. Instead, what I'd really love to see is Samsung take some of this developer talent that they've got. They've got incredible developer talent in-house to start addressing some of this slowdown, some of this mess.
Okay.
Yeah, totally agree.
There you have it, guys. Juan has laid the lore, and that's the end. So at this point, I mean, I think that's pretty much it. We'll see more. Like you said, the end of this year is going to be very interesting because you have the iPhone 8. Remember, also Apple's releasing the iPhone 7s and the 7s Plus.
Yeah.
You know, will be there, as well as also, you know, the Pixel 2, the Mate 10.
I mean, like, how scary is it that an iPhone 7s, not the 7s Plus, but the iPhone 7s will start to resemble the upper limit of the mid-price territory?
Yeah, interesting.
Isn't that? I mean, that's kind of a head trip. Where $600 used to be a premium, high-end, flagship grade device, and now $600 is almost mid-range.
Well, I mean, and think about how aggressive Samsung has made the cuts. Remember when the S8 came out and the S8 Plus?
Yeah.
Now you can get an S8 for $550, $570, depending on what.
Are those actual price cuts from Samsung?
Yeah.
Or is so like
at least five? I know when it was $570, it was on Amazon and Samsung website at the same price.
Oh, okay. So I mean, that is actually legit price cutting there from
price cutting. Yeah. So
actually, what about? That's the thing I actually want to ask you guys. What's the whole releasing the unlocked version at the same time as all the other versions this time around? I know for the for the Note 7 that wasn't the case, because I was looking for a unlocked version. I couldn't find an unlocked version for the Note 7. I had to go to an actual ISP to get it. This time around, it's actually pretty different.
I think Samsung. On one part, has figured out their financing issue in the US. That was the first thing. So
it's definitely their financing.
Yeah, if you wanted to finance the phone directly from Samsung, because they offered slightly sweeter deals, nothing too crazy away from, you know, T-Mobile and the rest of them, but they had at least some nice little extras in there. And also, you just had that deal where if you trade in your old phone, you get 2 phones for the price of 1. So as long as you had even if you had an S6, you could trade that in, and if you buy an S8 Plus, you get an extra S8 Plus. So you're still getting 2 phones for technically price of like 1.5, if you will. So Samsung, I think financing was the major thing there for them to be able to do that. So now they can go, hey, now if you want unlocked, you can do that. But you know, most of you want have that carrier jump program or things like that, so you can use that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's just the main thing.
And again, I think they're the only company with enough clout to sort of force the issue. Even talking with some LG PR reps, like they're so far away from even just getting a good payment service out the door that they can't even focus on trying to come up with phone financing. So
yeah, I mean, we just have to wait and see what LG does, which is IFA next week. So there are going to be a lot of big announcements there. At IFA. LG will be one. Huawei is doing stuff October for the Mate 10. Who else will be announcing at IFA? Yeah, that's it, right?
I don't know that anyone else is going to be announcing.
Maybe Sony, maybe that 4K Sony phone that they showed us early in the year that we couldn't actually record video on.
I'm still mad that we still haven't gotten our hands on an XC Premium. I really want, especially after Erica Griffin did her piece on it. It's like,
what was her thoughts on
that screen more? What's that?
What was her thoughts on the phone? Because I saw somebody.
I mean, it's all pros and cons. I mean, the thing is, if you want the best, sort of media content consumption device, that's probably it.
Okay.
I mean, when we really take a look at what the human eye can resolve, and you know, even with 20/20 vision, which isn't perfect vision, like a 4K screen around a 6-inch diagonal is actually the resolution cap. It's pretty close to that. If we look at the arc minutes of the human eye at the minimum focusing distance, that's an image that the human eye has a really difficult time discerning from reality.
What's wrong with you?
Why not? What's that?
What's wrong with you? I see 8K all the time.
I'm sure you do. Because I paid people to walk around just holding up signs that say 8K, and you're like, whoa, that's amazeballs. I'm totally seeing an 8K.
What is your problem? You can't be telling people my secret, man. Just because I see 8K doesn't mean that, you got to tell them it's a billboard that says 8K on it.
That's it. I mean, it's just literally the number in the letter. It's not that you're seeing any higher resolution. It's just we put tags on everything so you think you are. No, but I mean, like, I would highly recommend checking out her review on it. She gets into more of the like color profiling stuff than I'm qualified to talk about, and she really liked the consumption side of it. She has the same problems that I do with Sony camera apps, where they tend to fight you more than let you create. Like they
I
always
have a
used to have-
Sony camera, and yes, just the camera
Yeah.
alone fights with you.
Dude, I mean, Sony cameras are arrogant. It's like they know better than you what's going to make for a good picture. And he's like, that's not what I want to focus on. Nope, this tree's gorgeous. No, but I want to focus on this duck. Nope, the tree, dude.
No,
And you're like,
I'll put it this way: we're recording the S8. I'm sorry, the Note 8, and then I'm like, I need to get this color grading right. Like, I need to change my
white balance.
my Kelvin on my white balance. And David from the Locker is like, it's easy, man. You just have to go into that. I'm like, yeah, find it for me. Go ahead, do it. David's like, this is crap, man. I'm going back to my camera because it was hard to find when I found it. The increments of change were just like big jumps. You want to get some of that minutia, and I'm like, auto is just the best, man. You might as well just move on and call it a day. So
Yeah,
it definitely is. But anyway, thank everyone for joining us. I appreciate all the comments in the chat, and we've had a lively, long show with short topics again. And at this point, we're going to talk about what's on the channel and what we can expect next week. So, Mr. Juan Bagnell, we'll start off with you, and of course, I'm sure there's some Note 8 stuff on Pocket now.
Oh yeah, so we've got our initial hands-on. We've got the camera tour. We took a quick look at the new features coming to the Note 8 camera. I think Jaime also published like a top 5 reasons you should want to buy the Note 8, which is funny because I don't think he's super positive on it. I think he thinks it's like significantly too expensive. So it's funny that he did that video.
Really?
Oh yeah, I mean, if you catch our podcast, which was terrible on YouTube, but the audio version's probably better, then it's funny. He was very critical of the pricing for the Note 8. Excuse me. Then later this afternoon, we're gonna have another MYMHM episode recovered on vid.me, and then next week, like you were saying, I'm on a plane next week to go to Germany to go cover IFA. And see what else they've got. That's going to be exciting. There are actually a few other things that I'm stoked to go catch. They're a little less phone related. But I think Samsung's probably going to have some interesting announcements for tablets, I think. I know that they had some cool stuff to show off at MWC. So I think we'll see some cool stuff. It's just IFA is always sort of the quietest show of the three. So we'll have a bunch of Pocket Now dailies, Pocket Now recaps, stuff like that, just to try and keep the coverage efficient. And so you don't have like a ton of videos. Like, here's a 3-minute video on a pair of headphones you're not going to buy. We're going to try not to do that to you this year.
Okay. Yeah, on our end, I don't know why I paused there. Sorry. We've got a lot of Galaxy Note stuff on there. We've got some hands-on. We've got some other stuff that you like to see. And, this guy's back, just so you guys know. So you definitely check out his video. He was out there harassing people on the show floor, Samsung, checking out the Note 8. So feel free to check that video out. It might be a little crazy for your appetite, but I think you'll like it. And next week, we've got going back to some of our regular devices, we've got a soundbar from Samsung we have to do, which is an Atmos soundbar. We've also got a gaming keyboard from SteelSeries as well. And then we've got our best tech in the 100 for the month of August. I know we skipped July, so that's going to be coming up next week. And then some stuff from IFA. We're not going to IFA, but we've got some stuff that we can showcase. I can't tell you what it is, who is it from, or where I got it, but I think you guys would be quite happy with what you see. So that's pretty much it. And again, thank you very much, guys. Check out all the channels. Starting off with Mr. Warren Bowman, who couldn't be here, BW1.com. You can follow him on his channel. He's also on Twitter as well as Instagram with the same handle, as well as Mr. Juan Bagnell. You can follow him on Pocket Now. That is where, of course, his main videos are. And then he has his own channel, which is Some Gadget Guy, which is also his Twitter handle, his Instagram handle. And then his VidMe channel is Juan Bagnell. You can check out some of his older content. with his shaggy hairstyle and all that fun stuff there. And then Mr. Sam, aka Black Iron _man. That's right, man. This guy has all the cash. He is Iron Man and he is black. I don't know why I said it that way, but
That's interesting stuff. Interesting.
Yeah. But he's part of the Booredatwork network, and you can follow him on Twitter. That is his handle. And myself, it is Booredatwork on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Want to say thank you very much. Subscribe again. Hit the notification icon to get notified of our latest videos from all the channels. And always enjoy your entertainment.